And thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Earning Curve. The Earning Curve is a new platform in webinars and very different than other webinars you may have attended in the past. We let all of you as the audience drive the panel. So think about your questions and start formulating them and put them into the chat icon. There's a little thought bubble at the bottom of your screen. My name's Marianne Biangardi, and I'm in charge of business development at Schmershel, Treloar and Company. Today's topic is what's working now to engage prospects. We are talking about lead generation, some strategies, and what's working now. We hope this panel will find you or help you to discover new approaches and start engaging new prospects. So since all of you drive the panel, start getting those questions in. Let me get started with some introductions. Today, our anchor panelist is Karen Kopp with Kopp Consulting. Karen is the Chief Door Opener at Kopp Consulting. She's the chief door opener whose door opener service has helped thousands secure initial prospect meetings at the executive level. She is also a best-selling author of Biz Dev Done Right and an internationally recognized speaker. Fun fact about Karen's father got his dream job at Macy's after being told there wasn't yet a decision. He said, okay, I'll just see you at 9 a.m. on Monday. So Karen has often used this tactic. He was also in sales and owned his own company. Kim, good morning, Kim. Kim Baker with Vivid Performance Group is next. Kim is the founder and owner of Vivid Performance Group. She is an award-winning sales representative, sales manager, and leader in global sales training. Kim helps organizations hire, assemble, train the right individuals, teams, and leaders. A couple of fun facts about Kim. She loves a thrill. She has performed tandem skydiving and acrobatic sail planing in Arizona. She's also zoomed at 190 miles an hour around a Daytona Speedway, and at the age of 40 took trapeze lessons from the famed Flying Wallendas. Next up is Chris Ruzicka with Carmody McDonald Law. Chris is the Director of Business Development at Carmody McDonald. He generates new client referrals and develops new marketing opportunities to grow the firm. A fun fact about Chris, he grew up in a family of 14 children, including a twin brother. He likes to give back and he volunteers for several St. Louis organizations, including Ronald McDonald House and Boys Hope and Girls Hope. Next up, we have Don Gunther with Technology Partners. Don is the VP of Business Development at Technology Partners. He is responsible for selling staffing and app development services. He is currently around $2 million in annual sales of these services. Fun fact about Don, he has an MBA and a chemical engineering background. He's an avid reader. 2 years ago, he read 20 books on World War II. His current read is The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. He also enjoys restoring old cars, wine and beer making, ice hockey, golf, the Muni, and travel. Next up is Amy Franco with Impact Instruction. Amy is the founder and CEO of Amy Franco Associates. She has over 20 years of client-facing sales experience. Amy is a strategic sales expert and a keynote speaker. She currently works with mid-market technology and professional services organizations to grow sales results. She uses strategy and skills development programs. Amy is also a best-selling author. She wrote a book titled The Modern Seller. And a fun fact about Amy, she loves to travel and looks forward to getting back to it in the near future. Last year, pre-pandemic, she had the opportunity to travel to Kenya for a safari, and one of her most favorite memories was getting to stand on the equator. So before we open it up to all of your audience questions, I want to ask Karen Kopp a starter question as the lead panelist. After Karen responds, I would love for all the other panelists to chime in as well. So to get things started, Karen, what is the nature of how you engage prospective customers has changed dramatically since last year. What are your door openers doing to reach prospects these days, since most people are not actually in their offices?
Right. So much has changed since a year ago. If you think about it, everybody is working from home primarily. What does that mean? Some people are not necessarily in their jobs anymore. They're not necessarily in their offices anymore. prospects are letting their voicemails completely fill up, meaning you can't even leave a voicemail for them. And everybody that I know gets 250 emails a day. So what are our door openers doing that's working? I'll give you a couple of quick ideas, and then I'm interested to hear what everybody else has to say as well. But one of the things we're doing is strategically looking at the target audience and not going wide on audience when it comes to targeting, but we're going narrow. We're taking a look at urgency factors and specifically trigger events. What trigger events are going on within our clients' prospect groups that would cause the prospects to want to have the meeting sooner rather than later? Not all the buyers that used to be spending are spending. Let's use trigger events to find the buyers who are spending and then reach out to them. Then, of course, you have to say something that's critical for them. They have to understand why meeting with you would be the best decision they'd make all week. What are people saying right now? And is that effective enough to get people to agree to a call? And is it a call? Like, everybody would love to think that AI is going to develop a relationship, but actually developing a relationship involves talking with someone. And that means you actually have to call them. When people get 250 emails a day, they may only get 1 or 2 phone calls. Your share of voice is significantly higher. And as we track the data across programs of what's working with our door openers, significantly more meetings are being booked as a result of a conversation versus an email. Doesn't mean email isn't an important factor, as well as good LinkedIn outreach, but the conversation is what's driving people to say yes. That's where you get to say, what if we were to do this? What if we were to do that? And email just can't do that for you. So those are just a few of the things that are working for us.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. So let's, does anybody else want to weigh in?
Sure. I'd like to chime in and just say I agree with everything she said. I found 2 things in 2020 very helpful, and I'm going to give Pete Hogan, who until recently was the CIO at Post Holdings, credit for this. Pete told me we were reaching out for a webinar that we were holding, and we needed to get to an audience. And he told me, you need to keep your message short and sweet. So he sent me over a 2-line message, and I used that, and I got a 30% response rate. So think about how busy the people are, and you know, Karen mentioned the number of emails. I push the delete button when I see these long emails giving me the history and how great they are, but what do? So keep it short and sweet. And the second thing I would tell you is that I found that while everybody's working at home, they're also not traveling and they're not in meetings as much as they had been. So I cannot tell you how many CEOs I was successful at reaching in 2020. Of course, we have a secret weapon at Technology Partners, and it's called Lisa Nichols. Our CEO is so recognizable. So I kind of cheat in that way. So.
And if I could add one thought to that, I think this plays off of Karen, your comments about the narrowing the target audience. What about all of our current clients that we are already working with? They trust us. We've done great work for them. Thinking about our clients as prospects and where could we find other parts of their organization to potentially do business with? Or can we leverage tools like LinkedIn for finding those targets and asking for introductions from our network, from our clients? So looking at the other side of the equation, which is just digging into our client base a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd like to add, I think the way people want to be communicated has changed. And so we have to look at and mix it up and look at different ways to communicate to the prospects or clients. Microsoft recently did a study and they said during COVID, I think the usage of LinkedIn is up 30%. However, some people rarely get snail mail and some people are going into the office. So it might be that way, but really mix up the way you're communicating. The other thing is during COVID, I think we have a little bit more liberty to call people's cell phones or to text them. Before we were a little hesitant, but most people are working remotely. So I think it gives you the green light to be able to use cell phone or text.
And I'd like to chime in. One of the things that, and the way I approach this is not so much what people are doing, but what kind of traits make someone really successful at this, right? So with COVID, what we find is that, what I heard kind of from Karen is business insights, industry insights, really being able to drill down and dig into that. And we can actually, through personality profiling, understand what individuals in sales might be better at that or not, but also we can help folks. So if they need now a new competency, we can help them with that. The other one is just kind of overcoming obstacles. And does that person have the personality traits for that?
Awesome. Thank you all. So we have a question here in the chat. Let's go to this. Oh, I just lost my chat window for a second. Okay. How does a company ensure quality of leads when conducting their lead generation efforts? Karen, do you want to start with that?
Sure, I'll start with that, and I'm going to reiterate the very first part of that is the choice of target. When we start working with a client for the door opener program, we take a look at the kinds of prospects that they've been targeting. Usually 25% of anybody's prospect list doesn't belong on the prospect list. Your definition for what an important win is for you and for your company may have changed since a year ago. So make sure you're in alignment with the leadership of your company as to what identifies an important win for you. Make sure that only those prospect companies and those individuals are on that list. And then it's important to not only verify that those people are still working at that company, you can check against LinkedIn, but then drill down to their phone number and ultimately their cell phone numbers as well. We are reaching people on their cell phones now. It is acceptable. You can't abuse it, and it's not the first method of message delivery. Definitely phone to the office, email is important, and then you can switch to the cell phone. Leave a message first, and then you can text them something very, very short. One of the things that we're doing in order to find cell phone numbers, you can get that on if you subscribe to Zoom Info. If you don't subscribe to a list service like Zoom Info, one of the ways that we've been successful, you have to be a little creative. Don't ask for the cell phone number, ask for the remote number. It's more PC in terms of getting somebody's phone number. But then also, how do you ask somebody if nobody's at the office? Well, there are two departments who are at the office or answering the phone even when nobody else does. One is accounts receivable at any company, they're always there, and customer service is always there. And then you can ask for the person by name and ask for the remote number if you don't have it.
Yeah, perfect, Karen. And I've got another tool that I just learned last week. Get your crayons out and write down truepeoplesearch.com. It has, you wouldn't believe the amount of information it has. Truepeoplesearch.com. It has a lot of cell phone numbers on it. But I wanted to reiterate what you said about goals and targets. If you look under the dictionary under goals, it has my picture. And, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will get you there, right? So I'm in a networking group with Chris Rizika, and last fall we had a question in the group, and I said, who are your target accounts? And somebody in the call said, well, everybody's my customer. Well, if you take that approach, it's going to be more challenging, and I agree 100%. Figure out who you're trying to get to, figure out what your messaging is, figure out what your value proposition is, and narrow that target down. So agree again with you.
If I could add something to that, just to piggyback onto what Karen and Don were just saying, we talk about the quality of the targets. When it comes to the lead generation and leveraging your marketing teams, the quality of the data, the quality of the leads that are coming through in a webinar or some other kind of technology-based lead generation. So a quick example that I have is a client who has invested pretty heavily into marketing, lead generation, doing webinars, things like that. But the only data that they are collecting is a name, a first name, maybe a last name, and an email address. That doesn't tell you anything about the quality of that person, that lead, whether they are someone who could be a fit. So thinking about if you're in a marketing role or you're in a sales role and you're collaborating with marketing and you're doing these types of lead generation activities, really giving a lot of thought to the data that you're collecting. Typically, the more data that you ask for, sometimes the less you'll get in terms of registrations for these types of events. But I would argue that they would be higher quality because they really want to be there. So some food for thought on the marketing side of the equation there.
That's great insight. Thank you all. We have another question here. Do you all recommend LinkedIn Premium to help with networking? Who would like to start with that?
I know that in our company, part of our sales team has used LinkedIn Premium, and it's pretty powerful. So I think, and I own my own business for 10 years, so I look at it from the standpoint of you have to look at the cost of it and the value you're getting out of it. So I would do that analysis, but just LinkedIn in general has been just a powerful tool during COVID for us.
I'd like to add also that LinkedIn, yes, it's a very powerful tool. It will help you with research and understanding, as Amy said, the background of a person and whether that person truly is a good fit from an efficiency standpoint in prospecting. I can't speak highly enough about that, but I've seen a lot of bad LinkedIn outreach. So it really is, whether you're using phone, email, a smoke signal, or LinkedIn, it really is about the quality of the outreach. You have the ability to impress someone and go to the next level in the conversation, or you have the ability to completely turn someone off and then have no chance with them again. And when I'm giving my seminars, I put up this one slide of a guy who was trying to open up a relationship with me, and it said, hi, and in parentheses, it said, your contact name here. And that's how he wanted to open up a conversation with me. Other mistakes I've seen people make is pretending that you have a more developed relationship with someone than you actually have. When you first reach out to someone, you can't ask them the most personal of questions, like tell me about your goals for 2021. Why would anybody tell you that if they don't know you? So don't skip over the relationship building aspects of somebody getting to know you, you getting to know them, and then agreeing to a meeting.
Yeah, I would agree with Karen and Don as well. It's a powerful tool, but just like anybody who's in job search, when you're prospecting, make sure you're not glued to that computer. I see that mistake made time and time again where individuals are set in front of that computer rather than making and mixing up the communication and the reach out.
And I would add not to have an expectation of a return on LinkedIn if your team isn't going to make sure that their profiles are robust, that they're current, and they are participating in social media or LinkedIn specifically in other ways besides outbound or outreach. So you really have to be able to walk the talk with having your team having the profiles. I personally use LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I have a premium LinkedIn account. I think in all transparency, I signed up for a LinkedIn premium account probably a decade ago. So I think I got grandfathered in somehow, but I use LinkedIn Sales Navigator and I use it for research. I use it to understand who else might be in the organization. But then I'm real thoughtful about, okay, how do I want to reach out to this person? You can't just fire off LinkedIn messages and expect some kind of return. You end up with the mistakes that Karen's talking about.
So the ways I've seen it work a little bit better, and let me ask, I got some feedback that people weren't hearing me. Is the volume better? Awesome. So ways people have shared with me it's worked, and in fact, I'm going to try this myself, is making a connection on LinkedIn. Now, I've also just recently signed up for Seamless AI, so I am so excited to use that because I think it's going to be fantastic for the type of my business and how I do my campaigns. But the way I've heard some people use LinkedIn real successfully is find that contact that you want to connect with. So you make that, hopefully they'll accept your connection invite. Then send them a personal email because, like I'll be doing is finding through Seamless AI, I can actually ping and figure out the right email address, not through my CRM, figure that out later, how I bring it in, but just start to say, hey, thanks for connecting with me. If you don't mind, I'll send you a couple things over the next couple months. And if you prefer I don't, then let me know. But it's very personal and maybe about the way you see the fit, and you're not pinging them through the CRM, potentially, getting pushback on that, not making it through. And it's a longer term play in terms of building relationships. But instead of making the connection and coming at them and trying to sell them something, and I've had more bad experiences with people trying that with me than good. A couple of people I felt like really did try to nurture it, but I didn't need what they were offering through LinkedIn. So I'll share that. I think somebody said, what is Seamless AI? I am like the worst technical person. Go on and Google it. They will do a free demo for you and just show you how, whether you know a name, a company, an industry, and they can pull up information. They can, if you want to load it into your CRM, they can first do a ping to see if the right email address, because like they use example, Bank of America. They have like 3 or 4 domains, and you may have a name but not know the actual domain. So it's just really intriguing the way they use the AI.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was grabbing the next question here. Thank you so much, Kim. That's great that you expanded and you noticed that Lisa had that question about what Seamless AI is. Okay, so John's asking, how are you all going about with face-to-face meetings during COVID, or are you? And this is a great question for me too, because I'm in business development and I'm wondering this as well. So how do you do that? And like, what's the process? Would you maybe reach out first with a call and then, follow up with a Zoom? Is that how you could meet, or what is your process here?
Well, I'll just jump in there. I mean, we're doing that for our clients every day. That's what we do. Our clients will outsource the door opening at the executive level to us, and we'll get them these meetings. So as I said before, we are strategically targeting, we're saying something important, and then we're asking for the meeting. The prospect will accept the meeting. We send a calendar invite. Make sure it's accepted. If your calendar invite is not accepted, the chances of the meeting happening are very low. You're going to remind the prospect when you confirm why the prospect said the meeting was important. That reduces rescheduling. And then when the meetings happen, 99.9% of meetings that are happening since COVID are with video on. Whether it's Zoom or WebEx or whatever it is you're using, it is with video on, and it's because the prospects want it. Before, you had to say, oh, I want to share a screen, make sure you're at your computer. Now everybody is. If you don't turn your video on, it's almost like you're hiding something. So you need to show up on video, which means you have to know how to operate the technology and do that well and be able to show your screen. Don't forget to turn off the things that you had on before, so that as you show your screen, you don't show something that you don't want to show. If you have an email tracking system, make sure that you turn that off so that your prospect doesn't see all the emails you have coming in. And make sure, although I could talk about this forever, just make sure before you get off that meeting that you set a date and time for a next meeting. The single easiest way to shorten your sales cycle is by solidifying a date and time before you get off any meeting or phone call.
So Karen brings up a real good point. I think in addition, it's important to ask that prospect or that potential or the current customer what format they're using. So we all know some use WebEx, some use GoToMeeting, some use Zoom. Our company, our go-to is GoToMeeting. However, just yesterday, perfect example, some could not get on GoToMeeting, but they could go on Zoom. So I think it's important to ask before you set up that meeting what platform your company is using, because that's usually the one they're most comfortable. And most of the time, you can figure it out.
Let me just add, I think also the person wanted to know about in-person meetings. So prior to COVID, I was probably doing in-person meetings about 10 a week. And then, of course, when COVID hit, I was down to 0 per week. My first in-person meeting was back in June. And I would tell you that I'm back up to about 3 to 4 meetings a week in person now. And we're respecting the guidelines. I'm in St. Louis County, so we respect those guidelines. But I also listen very closely to how the customer feels. I have one customer that prefers face-to-face meetings, and then I have a bunch that are still preferring Zoom. So give them the choice of whether you want to do face-to-face or Zoom, and then be respectful of the distancing, the masking, and the cleanliness issues would be my take. And then I'll just give you one little bonus that I do. For every client meeting I have, I prepare an agenda. And it shows that I have prepared the discussion. It shows that I've thought about what I want to accomplish, and it shows respect, in my opinion, for the client.
That's very good. Thank you all. This is great info. I've had a couple people say that they love this. They wish they could stay for more. They have other calls. So thank you, Cindy, for saying that. Okay, so we've got another question here. What are some additional dangers of using LinkedIn for lead generation? I'm seeing pushback that the original purpose of LinkedIn is being corrupted because of so many people using it as a lead generation tool. Karen, do you want to start?
Sure. The dangers, the biggest danger is not using it well. As I said before, especially if you have a finite pool of prospects, it's really important to relationship build. So you want to make sure that the relationship building that you're doing is one-to-one, white glove, because these people, they are people. You know, we talk about prospects and leads and decision makers as these words, but actually what those words lack is the flesh and blood associated with the fact that these people are people, and they go to work or they work from home for a reason, and that reason is not to take your call necessarily. They have their own hopes and dreams and desires. And so the relationship building piece of it comes about when you do your research and you say something meaningful and you don't overstep these bounds as you're opening up this new relationship with somebody. So if you're going to use it as a tool, use it well. And remember, there's a human behind that. How would you feel when people are reaching out to you if they overstep? What would you do in that situation?
You know, I highly recommend that on a yearly basis, everybody takes the time to go in and see their LinkedIn connections and truly see if that is a connection. So you don't put yourself in a position when somebody wants to make ask you to make an introduction to somebody's in your LinkedIn, it's not somebody you really know. So once a year, I usually use the holidays, and I go through my LinkedIn and make sure if I haven't talked to that person or connected or don't even know that individual, then I take them off my LinkedIn connections, because I think it's important that you truly try to make those people that are connections in LinkedIn people that are truly connections.
And I would add to some of the dangers of LinkedIn is over-reliance on it as your only lead generation tool. It's really easy to sit behind your computer and be on LinkedIn and be on social media, but that doesn't always mean it's productive activity. And then secondly, one of the things I've been doing with LinkedIn, I think this tags on nicely to what Chris just shared. Similarly, over the holidays, I went into LinkedIn and I requested my connections, my data. So you put in the request and you'll get the CSV file back. I organized it into years, and it doesn't take that long to do because you can see when you connected with the person. And so I set aside anything that wasn't 2020 or 2019, anything that wasn't current. But I focused in on those couple of years, and I went through every connection that I had in that spreadsheet. I put each year onto a tab, and I went through every connection that I had, and I was doing it through the lens of wanting to connect with decision makers. So I vetted every connection with the help of one of my team members. Were they the right industry? Were they a potential decision maker? Would I like to make the effort to reach out and build a relationship? I kind of ruthlessly curated those lists and got down to some fairly short lists of people to connect with, and then went through the process of reconnecting and reaching out to them on LinkedIn. And we have had a really high success rate in earning first conversations just by going through that exercise.
Okay, guys, we've got some, we've got a couple of comments here. Jason wants to challenge Chris. Removing the connections reduces exposure. I would keep those in there since they can still see your post and content and help relay it. So Chris, think about that for a second. And then John is also tagging on, if you take people out of LinkedIn, does that feel like you're disrespecting that person? Poorly worded, but I think you know what I mean. I don't think I ever deleted someone from my network, but I don't accept new people. So Chris, what do you have to say about that? And we'll pass it through.
I think, again, I think it's everybody's personal decision. But for me, again, when I have people on a regular basis asking me to introduce them to people that are in my LinkedIn, and sure, I can easily say, look, I don't know them well enough. But if there's somebody in LinkedIn that I have LinkedIn with and I haven't connected, usually I'll reach out and then I'll say, hey, let's set up a time to really meet. So I see Jason's point. I don't like to delete people, but especially during COVID, I made an extra special effort to actually reach out to those people that requested, or I requested, to LinkedIn with them to see if we can set up some time.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. And you know what I do is I do my filtering on the front end. When somebody does a request, I look and see if it makes sense from a business standpoint, and see how many mutual connections we have, and see if there's an opportunity for me to learn new things from that person. So I'm a little bit persnickety, I guess, about who lit into the panel, because I get people from outside the United States, from Florida, just don't want to go there personal preference.
Yes, I totally agree. We've got Lorna asking, do you have to have premium to get the list Amy referred to? Amy, can you explain that?
Yeah, sure. So, to the best of my knowledge, you don't need the premium feature. If you go into LinkedIn Help and just search for downloading your connections, it will give you a step-by-step instruction list on how to do that. But I'm fairly certain you can have a free version of LinkedIn to do that.
Perfect, thank you. Marketing, okay, here's another question from Ryan. Marketing is always talking about having a strong story to engage with customers. How important is a story to the lead generation process? Don's nodding his head. Don, do you want to go first?
Yeah, and somebody asked about lead gen earlier and quality of lead gens, and I don't know if I commented to that appropriately. What I would tell you is that over the last 2 years, Technology Partners has really worked on refining our messaging to be more specific to what we do. And somebody told me when I was interviewing for the Technology Partners job, it's just as important to understand what you do well or what you don't do, as opposed to what you do, so you can not get into bad situations there. But our marketing team has really done a nice job, in my opinion, of focusing our messaging on exactly what we do and who we do it for. And the quality of leads I've had in the last 6 months, to give you numbers, I'm a numbers guy, engineer. I've gotten 4 leads in the last 6 months. I closed 2 of those. I should close 1 more, and the other was a mislead. So I hope that answers the question.
I'll jump in too and add to that one of the things that we found when we're developing sales messaging for our clients when we're launching the Door Opener program is that the whole idea that there is something called sales messaging is kind of new for people. People will spend a lot of time on their value proposition, which is a marketing term. They'll spend a lot of time on their website and their advertising, which are marketing initiatives, which are great. When it comes to sales messaging, that is the spoken word. And it is the email meant for one person to move one person in his or her thinking from one place to the next. And that has to do with sales messaging. One of the things that I'm constantly educating people on is that in sales messaging, It doesn't really matter why you're different. Actually, nobody cares why you're different. It means it's meaningless to them. They only care why you are of more value to them. And if you can articulate that, you win. And most of your competitors cannot articulate that, so they lose.
I have to say there's something that Karen and I run in some different networking circles, and there's this phrase that she uses that I wrote down and starred and highlighted. And what she said is basically the right words matter and the right words win. And so that sticks with me, Karen. And I think about it every time I'm getting ready to pick up the phone or send an email or, whatever it is, just how important those word choices are. I think the other thing I would add to that is you really have to be careful with story, because the story has to be important to the person, so the relevance. So if I'm having a conversation with whether it's a current client or a prospect, and I'm listening to what they're saying, and I'm kind of running through my mental Rolodex of maybe stories or examples, I'm looking for something to share, an experience I've had or an experience another client has had solving a similar or the same problem, and being short and concise on how we did it. If I'm going off in a different direction, talking about a different type of story or case study that isn't meaningful to that person, then I lose them. So I think story is important, but just the context of it and really using it in the context of helping them think differently, how to solve a problem, what's relevant to them.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. And let me ask, is the volume getting any better? I keep trying to adjust it. Okay, great.
It is, Kim. It's much better now.
Awesome. So storytelling. So for anybody who's not familiar, there's a framework called the SOAR framework. This is fantastic. Like, I think everybody I've ever trained or coached in some way, shape, or form could benefit from this. So SOAR, SOAR, stands for the situation, either the opportunity, the obstacle, the action that was taken, and the result. So if I like the sales messaging, I teach salespeople, listen, people buy for their reasons, not yours. You have to get in whatever you have to offer. They don't buy the feature, they don't buy the benefit, they buy the impact to them. So lead with that. So you might in an email say, this company benefited in this way, here's how. And then you give brief situation, opportunity, obstacle, action, result. If you're dealing with somebody who's in an affliction, like they got a problem to fix, you might say they faced the same obstacles you did, or the same, if you're going for the aspirational sell, which it's much harder, generally speaking, to take somebody from being, I'm pretty happy and okay, to, oh, you can be so much better, right? That's bringing them a lot more insight. That's typically a more nurtured sale, unless you can, in your dialogue with them, help them to see that what is today an aspiration could become an affliction tomorrow. So if you're going to go the storytelling method, go the SOAR, because think about it, we live in a 140 character world. How many of us, when we go onto a website, you quickly, like in 15 seconds, if I don't think what's there's what I need, I'm off, right? So, and people are getting so many of these days, again, because of the technology and CRMs and all. So we have to really catch their attention.
I'd like to chime back in on, once you have the story that you've decided to tell for the situation you're in and where you are in the process of your relationship with the prospect. We already talked about brevity. One thing we didn't talk about yet is the individual words. So you have your story, take a look at the individual words and see if there's a different word than the one you selected, which can work even harder for you. And I'll give you an example, and Amy's seen me do this with word pairs before, right? So you could say, I can show you how this works, or you could say, I can prove how this works. Prove is going to work significantly harder for you as a word than show. So if you take a look at your story and then each individual word, make sure they're all working hard for you, you will be able to have more impact, as Kim said, than if you didn't do that. The person with the best words wins.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I'd add, I think this is obvious, but we all sometimes in a sales role or as a door opener, we forget to listen. Believe me, I come from a family of 14 children. We all were always talking. And so that was hard for me. But I think it's important that we also, I see the mistake of people in a sales role or business development role, continue to talk and forget to listen to the client or the prospect.
That's absolutely true. Good advice, Chris. I thank you, everybody. Okay, so we've got a couple others here. What are some obvious sales and business development techniques or no-nos that you, mistakes you might continue to see and experience? Chris, do you want to start with that? Like some,
Yeah, I would say three things. One, I see on a regular basis, be patient. People assume that the relationship will be built after the first meeting and that they can ask for the sale. It'll take time. I work with attorneys who will say, Chris, you know, I met with that person 2 or 3 times and no work's coming. You have to be patient. I think two is make sure you're organized. Most people do not have CRM systems. And so if you don't have a CRM system or your company's not investing in one, make sure you have some type of bring up system. When you say you're going to stay in touch, do that. I don't care if it's as archaic as putting someone on a calendar that says, don't forget to follow up with Julie. So I think that's important, but I keep going back to be patient, build that relationship. It's not going to happen overnight.
One of the things that I have found, the insight selling model, I've used it in my own business, I've used it in others, and the value that I see in that model, and I'm tagging it to what Chris said, is that if you understand why buyers buy, and first of all, it is that rapport and that connection, and sometimes it takes longer. One key thing, though, in the research that the RAIN group did is that they uncovered that the people who won the business versus the first loser, so that was the second choice, one key thing they did differently is that they knew that there was risk most likely in the mind of the buyer that wasn't expressed. So at the outset, as appropriate, they cleared that off. And I think a lot of us believe that a prospect will raise objections, they will raise concerns about risk much more frequently or earlier than they will. My experience, they'll kind of hold that back. And to the degree you're comfortable saying, you know, what concerns you about this, or just even if you know, and particularly what you're selling or your product or service, if there, as a category, is general risk around it, or certainly, you know, if there's been anything with your company, you know, you have to be aware of that. So anybody who's not familiar with that model, I think it's a fantastic model. It's not necessarily the number one. It's, you know, I couldn't tell you what the number one is, but it's a good one and it's easily accessible and you're able to learn from it.
Something that's been pretty successful for me in this crazy time this last year. I've been doing a lot of research on potential clients. So we're talking to a $3 billion quick serve restaurant group that's based out on the West Coast. And I had done, I would say, probably 3-4 hours of research. And then I went to Pete Hogan's suggestion of a brief message and got a reply pretty quickly. The other tool I've used is I'm working on a public company in St. Louis. And my daughter is VP of Investor Relations with a company in New York City, and I found out that their investor calls are public information. So I Googled this company's investor call for November and found out in the call that the CEO specifically called out the CIO as leading a digital transformation project. And I emailed that person, who's a senior VP at a very large company, and referenced the call, the comments, the digital transformation, and he responded to me in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So quick message, a lot of research, specific target, and I just was astounded.
I'd like to pick up on what Don is saying. Like, if everybody listened to his story and how he was able to achieve his exact outcome, but it took him a little longer, there is a direct correlation between time spent and success when it comes to business development, as long as you're doing business development properly. So if you have an hour on a Friday and you decide, oh, great, I have an hour, so I'm going to put a bunch of calls out there, and you decide you're going to make 40 calls in an hour, you're going to have 40 crappy calls, likely. There's no way you can reach 40 of the kind of call that Don just talked about. So you need to be realistic with yourself, which is why narrowing your target is so helpful. But the more time you have with the consistency over time, the more success you will have. If you have time on a Friday and you just call people on a Friday and then you don't call them back for another month, another 2 months, it's like you never called them at all. Don't bother. Go do something else. Watch a movie, but don't do this. If you're going to do this, commit to it so that you can be successful.
That's also a great example, Don. Your story is a great example of a triggering event. It's research, it's leveraging a triggering event, because right in that moment of time, that was extremely important to that CIO. So the time sensitivity, you've done your research, and the time sensitivity of reaching out makes a big difference. I would say another thing, two thoughts on mistakes / things that if you do them well, they work really well. Karen, coming back to it's very tactical. Get the next time scheduled on the calendar to keep momentum. Every time I have failed to do that, I count how many weeks and months it can take to get back on the calendar. It could take you a month, maybe 2 months to get that time back. So that's a really tactical, smart way to keep momentum. And then lastly, one thing that's been working for me, especially with new relationships, new prospective clients, kind of similar to Don's story of research. I will do some research on that organization. I will do some research on the industry, and I will have a call with them that's 30 minutes where I simply share strategies and recommendations and things, the trends that I'm seeing in their industries, because many of our decision makers, back to Karen, your comment about them being people, they're overwhelmed and overloaded. What can you provide to them in terms of really great, thoughtful ideas that can help them move their business forward? I find that very successful in people being willing to take 30 minutes to learn something like that.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up with what Amy said. I've been doing the same thing. And one thing that's worked really well for me is using Calendly and having that link for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And because they can do it at their choice, it's a time that works for me. We don't have the back and forth on, does this work for you? And by the time they come back, my time's not available. So I found that really beneficial, and just quite frankly, for being much more productive. I actually do that with clients now, to provide them Calendly links, and I time block, and it's just made me much more productive. And my business development has been much more successful because I block out the time, whether it's prospecting or working with my referral network.
I would say one technique that's worked for me during COVID is partnering up with other companies like Mary Ann's to do mixers, online mixers. So maybe a potential referral source or maybe a client, but a 1 hour or 30-minute mixer where most people, although they say they don't want to be on another Zoom, people want some interaction. So it's not just maybe you're one individual prospect you're meeting with, but several people in their organization meeting with several people in your organization. Facilitate so everybody has an opportunity to speak, and you're done within 30 minutes to an hour. But people will tell you they don't want to get on another Zoom call, but most people really want to have some interaction if they can't meet face to face.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And Chris, you had it very organized in an agenda, and we all had our speaking time, and there was an order to it. And the time went by, and we felt like we got to know everybody. It was great session. He also hosted a trivia night. That's another kind of fun thing, just to get different people involved. And people say they don't, but they really do. You're right. Okay.
Yeah, one quick tip when it comes to those networking things, and people are tuning into those, and they're enjoyable and all that, and you put a bunch of people who are good connectors on there. The most important thing about those networking Zoom kinds of calls is the one-on-one. Just showing up is not it. It's like 50% of it. And if you're in school, 50% is an F. So if you're going to tune into one of those, pick the top 3 people who serve the same clientele as you do, and then reach out to them and ask for the one-on-one. That is what starts the business development.
Absolutely. That's a great point, Karen. Very good. And then back to what you guys were saying too about adding value, like what can we do to help? I mean, people love that. You got to help and then you'll get, the return and they'll be open to listening to you. Okay. So back to, I think we had another question up here. I'm sorry, I'm getting involved, losing my chat window. How often should you reach out to a prospect, Karen? And when should you give up on one? Let's go to that question.
Okay, so it depends on where you are in your relationship with the prospect, this particular cadence, but I'll just speak to net new prospects when you're first reaching out to them for the first time. You can have a cadence of once a week where it's phone and email in the first week. The next week, it could be phone, email, and LinkedIn outreach. And some people will ask me, is it phone first or email first? I don't care. Just do it well. It doesn't matter, and do it in combination. And then after that, you could do phone, email. You can find out if they have an assistant. If they do, you could start befriending that person and asking for some help. Remember, don't be afraid to use someone's cell phone, but don't use it first. But that is the cadence. And then after about the first 4 outreaches, you can drop your cadence, especially depending on the level of the prospect. The higher the level of the prospect, you want to drop your cadence sooner. You can go to every other week, but remember, every time you say something or you write something to that individual, it cannot be the same message. You have to deepen your relationship over time. They will hear your voice. They are going to see your name. It creates an impression. There is 3 Ps for prospect follow-up: persistence, with patience, without being a pest. So you want to make sure you are deepening your relationship and not giving up too soon either.
So I've got a story to share there. Last June or July, I connected to a company here in town that's in major retail space. And long story short, they had a project that they needed work on. So we had a meeting. The first part of the project we didn't get invited to. So he said, probably the second piece we'll need to talk to you. And I thought I heard a time frame of October 1st. So I was pretty persistent about following up. Well, the CIO called my CEO and said, hey, can you have Don back off on his outreaches? And Lisa called me and I told her, well, Lisa, I'd rather have you get that phone call than, hey, I haven't heard from Don. But I backed off. So my suggestion based on that learning would be to kind of pretend you were in that person's position and kind of how often would you like to be reached out to? The good news is that this year we've closed 1.2 million with those guys. So it wasn't a total loss, but just be careful is my learning.
Thank you, Don. No, that's good. That's good. We need these experience stories so we can all learn. Okay, so we have another question here. What role does digital sales collateral play in supporting lead generation efforts? So video, electronic sell sheets. Who wants to start with that? Maybe Amy?
Yeah, I can chime in on that. So for myself personally, I've been leveraging quite a bit more video. So I have a CRM, I have a video platform. I will record short videos. LinkedIn actually will integrate with many video platforms. So if you like to use leverage with LinkedIn, you can. But I have found my engagement by putting video into my emails or into my LinkedIn outreach has helped with engagement and converting those into initial conversations. So that is something that's worked really well for me. I don't personally use a lot of digital collateral. I keep my collateral light because what I find is a lot of collateral gets filed away. The only collateral that I would create is thought leadership collateral. So ebooks, white papers, things that are truly substantive and can help solve problems versus marketing collateral. So just want to differentiate a little bit about how I see digital collateral.
So just to prove that you can teach an old dog new tricks, I started using Vidyard in 2020. That's Vidyard. And I've got a note right up here. So they suggest limiting your video to 50 seconds, 10 seconds, a triggering a problem, 30 seconds of a value proposition, and 10 seconds of a call to action. And I've started using it. I'll tell you that I'm still a novice in the area, but I am using it and I am improving my work in that space, and I'm excited about it. So, and we also, most of my information is digital, so I do use a lot of digital media.
I also have successfully used video, Don, to after an initial meeting. So I will do a little bit of follow-up. I will summarize key points from an initial conversation. I'll put that into the body of the email, but then I will also do a short, maybe 30-second, 45-second video that I will include with that follow-up.
Another technology that I'm just becoming aware of is Loom, Loom. And I have a colleague who said he uses this. So this is past the prospecting stage and for proposal. And he combines, I guess, the proposal with the video. So that's on my list of digital tools to pursue. But he said he's been quite successful with it and that people respond very well because it's so different, at least right now.
The one thing I would add to all of this is that the visual aids should aid you visually. They don't take the place of a conversation or a relationship. And a lot of people, as we talked about earlier, will hide behind email. Some people will hide behind their visual aids. But if you're using digital collateral, it's meant to be general because it has to appeal to a wide variety of people. Being specific in sales is what I have always found to be successful.
I was doing some research for another event, but this question ties perfectly into it, which is, how many tools does a sales professional use and how much are companies spending on average on sales technology tools? And this was a study that was done by Sales Media Tools, I believe or Smart Tools, excuse me, is the platform that did this research. So what they found was that the average number of tools that a sales professional is using is 5. And the average spend that an organization is incurring is for two-thirds of the organizations that were in this survey spent $150 a month per professional on tools. So it can add up very quickly. So being aware of that and being intentional about any of those types of tools that you bring into your organization.
Hey, Amy, I'm wondering if they did a further data point on not only how many is each salesperson using, but how many are they using well?
Oh, I don't recall that in that study, but that would be a great question. Right?
Probably the most important one.
Exactly.
That is great. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we only have like 3 minutes left. We might go a couple minutes over just to warn the audience because I do want to allow for everybody to give a little bit of a takeaway for the audience. Karen, let's start with you and then we'll go through the line. Well, Karen and then Amy, and then we'll call on somebody else next. Go ahead.
Yeah, a quick takeaway for you is this works. Business development is working now. You have to be a little bit more strategic. You have to do things just a little differently than you used to do them. But I'm here to tell you, because we do business development for other companies, it works. And we are getting in the door and our clients are closing sales, and you can too.
Yes, I echo that. And I'll add to that by saying, don't leave your business development or your lead generation to chance. Be very intentional with a plan that includes your key verticals, your key target clients, and the methods that you intend to use, and really work the plan. If you don't work the plan, you can't expect to see results.
Perfect. And then Chris, Don, and Kim, go ahead.
So I would just reiterate, understand how your customer, your prospects wants to be communicated to. That's part of your research. And then be patient. It'll come. Build that relationship.
And I would say that we started using Pipedrive here about a year and a half ago, and it's an excellent tool. No matter what CRM system you use, just use it effectively. And it's funny, I found the darndest thing that the more I pick up the phone and call people, the better my sales results are.
Oh, Kim, you're on mute.
So what I've learned, and I'm beginning to do more and more of, is there are certain ways that I've helped clients and prospects become clients through COVID, and based upon some of their business changes and challenges that will continue. So what I'm doing is asking for referrals and recommendations from people who can specifically say how I help them during the challenges of COVID and how that's going to help them moving forward. I'm actually updating now my bio that I provide to referrals and connectors, and updating the referrals and recommendations in there, so that if they're connecting, they know of a company that I can help, and specifically maybe a certain industry or an issue, and can talk about how I helped somebody else through COVID and what it may be in the future, because some companies understand what their quote unquote new normal is. Some are still trying to figure it out. So it's still a timely message.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here. It looks like we're at time. We hope you found some value today in our presentation. And thank you to all the sponsors. And please feel free to reach out to any of our panelists. Thank you to Enterprise Bank, Schmershel Treloar, Spoke Marketing, St. Louis Makes, Carmody McDonald. And you can find all of our speakers on LinkedIn, and they will all be happy to connect with you. It has been an honor to be your moderator today. Please check out the screen for our contact info. And on behalf of all of us at the Earning Curve, thank you, and we'll see you back here in 2 weeks, February 16th. Our next panel is how to communicate to prospects and avoid messaging mishaps. So have a great day, and we will see you all next time.